Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Unsecurity Podcast, episode number 202. I'm your host, Oscar Minks, and I'm joined by the always wonderful Brad Nye. Hey, Brad, how's it going
Hey,
today?
not too bad. Keeping busy.
Yeah, yeah, you still working a lot of vendor risk management, I see.
It is slowing down a little bit. We got other people up
Hmm.
and running on it, so that has taken a huge amount of pressure off to not be the only one doing it. So I feel like the
Sure.
last couple of weeks, I'm finally able to breathe and get caught up on some stuff.
Excellent. Starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel now. Feels good to get some other folks skilled up and able to take those projects on.
Yep, yeah, they're doing a great job with it. So I'll do
Yeah,
my shout
excellent,
out
man.
early and say shout out to the working group who's stepped up and volunteered for this.
Yeah, I stepped on, I caught the end of that today, and it is a fantastic group. And kind of piggyback on that shout out. Sadie from our PM team is
Yep,
doing such a phenomenal job. She
yeah,
is such a hard
killing it.
worker, great thinker, is really good at process. And so, yeah, she's really knocking it out of the park for sure, man.
So, but yeah, no, got BCISO work going on. I did an assessment for a higher ed that blew my mind. They're
Uh oh, good
no,
or bad?
like I was like, holy crap, really? Their default
Yeah,
user passwords are 16 character, service accounts are 30 character, and admin
nice,
accounts are 18 character minimums. I was like,
very
what?
nice.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
So
love to see that, man.
yeah, yeah, they got a lot of really good stuff in place.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, so I was in Minneapolis last week, Minneapolis area. It was nice. I came up for Secure 360, and it was a really fun conference. I got to see some coworkers there, some friends there, some old coworkers who I haven't seen in a while. That were with other companies now that were there. That was nice, and some listeners to the show. So shout out to you folks who are listeners who came up and chatted with me. I
That's awesome.
appreciate that, and it was super nice to see you all there. And thanks for the kind words too. So you'll get a kick out of this, Brad. I was doing my talk, and so go to set up at the podium and hook my laptop up, and my display port died. And so,
Everybody's worst, every presenter's worst nightmare.
yeah, yeah, 100%. It was like, well, this is going to stink, but I do have to give a shout out to the Secure 360 people because their staff was amazing. They were super awesome. They were quickly able to find, like, maybe it's the adapter. Let me get another adapter. They brought even, a different whole entire setup. So maybe it's something had gone wrong with that relay to the
Mm,
projector. We troubleshot everything, and then I just accepted like it's probably just my laptop at this point. And I know I had some other folks on the team that had a similar model that had some DisplayPort issues, and so I said, well, that's probably it, and let's just roll without the slides. Which I was, like you said, it's kind of a speaker's worst nightmare, but it actually I think ended up being good and maybe even better for some aspects because you know it made the talk more interactive, right? There wasn't the
mm,
backdrop of the slides,
sure.
and so it gave me the opportunity to kind of talk to folks and say, hey, there's no slides, so if I say something, I go gloss over it too fast, you don't have any visual reference, like just speak up, interrupt me at your
Yeah.
you know leisure, and we can have a chat about those things. And I seen that people were more apt to kind of speak up and ask questions throughout the presentation. And so we had a lot of really good interactions, some good conversations throughout the
Very
presentation.
cool.
That was really nice. And then I also kind of thought like, well, I could still see my slides. It gave me the ability, because no one else sees those slides, to even be creative with how I'm
Mm,
presenting the content. And so I think I kind of realized sometimes these slides can maybe limit us to a box, right?
yeah.
And so if we take those slides away and just deliver from a creative approach and kind of organically let that talk go where it should go based on the crowd's feedback and response, that maybe sometimes it could even be a positive to not have a slide deck as you're doing those talks and
Well,
presentations.
it helps that you had a really interesting subject. I think I presented at Secure 360 before the pandemic, so maybe 2019, I think, maybe.
Hmm.
And I was doing it on disaster recovery, so definitely not as exciting as your talk. That would have been pretty painful to go through DR with slides or references for people.
Oh, that's not true, Brad. You can make. I'm sure you made DR fun for everybody, man.
I mean, as fun as it can be, right?
Yeah, as fun as it can be.
Very cool.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny
So it
though.
was a lot of fun, and it was cool to get to see a lot of folks. And then I have to give a shout out to April from our consulting team too, because I
Oh yeah.
kind of that almost got double booked, and was supposed to do a conference in Fargo, and so April stepped up and said, "I'll take that talk, and I'll go to Fargo." And so she got to the conference in Fargo. I think, well, she found this out beforehand, and I've never heard of this before. It was my talk, right? And so it
Mhm.
was another talk I do for BEC, business email compromise, leading through ACH fraud and the kill chain. And so I kind of worked with her on the talk, so she felt comfortable, because that's always weird, like taking someone
Yeah.
else's talk
Oh
and
yeah.
delivering it, and I sat in on some dry runs with her, and she just did an awesome job. It's like, you're ready, you're gonna knock it out of the park. And then she got an email confirming her schedule at the conference, and she had to give the talk 3 times. 3 times back to back to back.
Oh,
And so I
that
was like, yeah, I've never seen that. I've never heard of that.
no.
Um, but they did that for, like, I guess they had 3 or 4 different speakers that delivered their talks 3 times, so it would give the audience to see all of those. Which, to me, I just wondered, why can't you just give these talks in sequence, and
I
so
wonder if it
everybody
was
can still see every
a
talk?
capacity issue. The rooms weren't
Could
big
have
enough
been.
for everyone. That's the only thing I can imagine.
Yeah,
'Cause, yeah, I haven't heard of that
yeah,
before.
yeah. But sounds like she did a great job, and it was so good. The talk was so good they wanted it 3 times.
There
That's
you
the
go.
joke.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of fun stuff, man. It was great to get to see everybody too, and missed you, man. Didn't get to
I
make it out to
know.
our little happy hour, but
No.
got to visit with some
Um.
folks in the office, and that was fantastic.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
thought that.
so I think we got a little off sync there. I think we're back now. The Hive, man. I think we might have mentioned this on a previous episode about the FBI took down the Hive,
Yeah.
but it sounds like there's been some more information and a really interesting interview out there with one of the individuals who was part of that operative, and
Yeah.
some interesting stuff going
Yeah. I was
on.
really. So it was the record is who did it. I guess is the article we saw. It was click here, recorded future news, had some of the interview on it, but it was really interesting to see what they did and read about it. Like they were in for seven
Hmm.
months. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's a pretty significant dwell time, and you know obviously they're not going to give away some of those tactics for how they got in, how they were able to dwell so long. But when I discovered a 7 month dwell time, like, holy moly, that is a
Yeah,
long time. And they
right.
were never really discovered. They
No,
proceeded to a full shutdown, and actually were never discovered as infiltrating this network.
right. Yeah, they were saying that they were kind of acting as an affiliate, except that they would then provide, they didn't do the encryption. They would just like go in and act like they were doing stuff and then provide decryption keys to people. It was, I was like, that's nuts.
Yeah, it was so interesting. You would think in this affiliate driven market, so this is a ransomware as a service group, and they talk about some stuff that we've talked about before. So I think it should come as no surprise. They were operating like a pretty well oiled machine of a business, right? So they had a help
Hmm.
desk. They had specific roles for different people in that organization. They had the partner network and the affiliate network. And so it was really interesting to me that their FBI was able to masquerade as an affiliate, but actually never generate any revenue. You would think that
Right.
may be something they noticed. And then the other thing that was really surprising to me is that they were able to create those decryption keys. So the FBI started identifying victims and
Hmm.
then reaching out to notify all of those victims that they have generated a decryption key, or even in some cases reaching out to notify victims that they were about to be encrypted before the
Right.
encryption event takes place. And so to me, that kind of sheds a lot of light on these ransomware organizations, that they're probably not auditing their self very well.
No,
If they had
no.
been auditing their self very well, they would have noticed that an affiliate was generating decryptors for attacks that they were not associated with, which to me seems like a glaring red flag that's going to get you
Yeah,
caught real quick.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said they prevented. 130 million in ransom payments, and that's just the payments. That's not downtime and incident response and legal counsel and all that other stuff
Hmm.
that companies would. I mean, even if they, had negotiated down to half of that, still, that's a lot of money.
It is, yeah, and not even, I don't think that number even takes into account the other organizations that were in process of being victimized that they were able to provide
You're
information
right,
to
right. That was
recover
just
as
for
well. So that would have
providing
been even
encryption.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bananas. The other thing, they were saying 48 states, and 72 different countries. I
Hmm.
mean, so this was a pretty widespread. I think they said, what was it, 300? What was it? I can't remember the number now. I can almost see it, but yeah, it was a huge number of companies that they helped
Hmm.
um, prevent this with. But yeah, the double extortion model that we've been talking about, and now we're seeing less of that double extortion and more just plain old, we're going to exfil your data and sell it or leak it if you don't pay us. But
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a shift that, like so we've talked about that a few times, that is coming. And there's a lot of risk with that too, like copycat organizations and people who may find an old data dump pretending to extort. But um, I know I think that that is a paradigm shift that is a result of things like this, right? Because we can see this is a very good example of like the Hive. They were playing dirty too, like, and so we
oh
talk
yeah,
about some ransom organizations have some ethics or some morals. It's so weird to say that, but there are some
right,
that honor a code of ethics or morals, and one of those being we don't attack healthcare organizations, right? And
yep,
so the Hive really, really profited during COVID. And they were the ones that said, we don't care. We're going to go after these healthcare
right,
organizations. And
yeah,
they
they
were actively targeting hospitals because they knew those hospitals critically needed those systems up to care for everybody who was in there and related to the pandemic. And they were more likely to pay. And guess what? It
yep,
worked. They were exactly right. These organizations were much more willing to pay that ransom because they had to have systems online, which is
yep,
despicable. It's gross. It makes me sick on so many levels. And so, but yeah, happy that our three-letter agencies were able to infiltrate and shut these guys down. But I think that's at an example, right? Like more and more of these ransomware gangs are observing, like if we are implementing, if we are attacking targets that could potentially affect human life, people are going to come after us. It's a different
right.
ballgame now, right?
Well, the other thing is too is now, what does this do to other ransomware gangs, right?
Hmm.
Are they now going to become more paranoid, allow less affiliates? What is the long term impact of this going to be? Because
Hmm.
I think the only downside to this is, at this point now, hopefully this changes, but at this point there haven't been any arrests,
Hmm.
right? And so hopefully that changes, because that is really, I mean, yeah, taking the money hurts, but getting people in jail stops them
Hmm.
from doing it, and it can serve as a deterrent for others.
Yep. Yep. 100%.
And the one thing in there that when I read it, I just went, "Yep, that seems about right." Is that they were saying that they compared the list of who had reported ransomware events and those that were actually had been victimized that they saw in the Hive, and it said it was 20 to 25% of victims had actually reported it. I mean,
Yeah.
it and we question, like, we're like, yeah, we don't have good data. This is why we need better information
Hmm.
to understand that. That's why, we talk about how much a ransomware attack costs on average, but that's only the ones that report it. If we're only looking at 20% sample size, do we even really have a good idea of what actually is happening?
Right. Yeah, and that number to me, it wasn't surprising either. I kind of reacted the same way, but then I thought about it a little bit more because I don't understand what that number means. And what I mean by that is um, they're comparing it. They said they compared it to the list who had reported. Are we talking the people who reported to IC3? Are we talking to people who reported to insurance? Are we talking about people who publicly disclosed? Because those are
Yeah, that
three
is a
very
good
different
question.
things, right? And they're all part of that process. And so, and I can say that I think there is a low frequency of reporting to our government agencies and IC3 because, and I'm not saying anything bad about these people, like these agencies. I know they work really hard, but the reality is they don't often provide a lot of value for people that are in these situations, and
Right.
only because they are overwhelmed, over inundated, and overworked. And so the reality is, in a lot of cases, by the time the FBI is able to provide resources to assist, too much time has taken place, and so the data they're able to bring has already been discovered through other channels, or they don't have relevant data or even the resource uh, capacity to be able to support these organizations. And so I think that's why we see a low number of people reporting. Now, I think people should continue to report these for exactly the reason, like you mentioned just now, Brad. We need more data. We need more data, and we need to give our government agencies an opportunity to correlate this data so we can feed this to CISA, and
Yep.
CISA is doing better, I believe. I know we've talked about before. I think CISA, we've seen in years past, they were kind of behind the curve. I am seeing improvements in CISA where they
Mm-hmm.
are trying to stay ahead of that curve. They're doing better and trying to disseminate data to all of our organizations. And so this type of reporting is critically important for that CISA initiative. So this is why you should report this regardless of what you're going to get out of it. Report it because it's the right thing to do, and it could help other organizations who may be in a similar situation as you down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. And going a little bit further, CISA's been releasing some really good tools,
Mm-hmm.
to investigate your environment. And how are they going to get that information or to provide these
Mm-hmm.
tools? Well, they need to know what's going on.
Yep. Yep. 100%. Yeah, that's so I would say everybody probably if you get time, check out the interview. It's short. It's like 20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
The transcript's there. If you don't even want to listen, you can just read the transcript. But that we'll put the link up. I'll make sure our marketing team gets that. But this is on the record, which is Recorded Futures News. It's a good listen. I think it's worth
Yeah.
everyone's time for 15, 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So other things happening. And I know we've talked about this at high level before, but I did want to mention it quickly today. Is passwordless technology is taking a step forward, and Google is starting to roll out passkeys or password technology for all of its users. And so essentially, this is we've talked about this before, but that push to passwordless technology, where we'll be using devices, primarily cell phones are going to be the most popular, to be able to authenticate the applications, and you'll no longer interact using passwords, right?
Yep.
And so I have thoughts on this. I think that I think there's still a long way to go before this technology is widely adapted. And the reality is maybe Google's pushing, Microsoft is pushing to go this direction as well, and getting those two giant players heading that direction. It's probably going to cause adoption to speed up through the rest of the space much quicker. However, I do still think there are risks associated with the passkey movement that will reveal themselves in due time. And I think it's going to be a new complication for security practitioners to be able to work to secure those devices. One big thing right off the bat that I think about here is if we look at Microsoft pushing and Google pushing,
Mhm.
and I understand a lot of businesses operate in that Google space or in that Microsoft space, and we know the trend over the last 5 to 10 years has been for organizations to trend away from company owned devices to allowing BYOD
Yeah.
and personal devices having access into these company infrastructures.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with that is a lot of organizations are doing MDM on those personal devices. They don't really have a lot of control over those personal devices to ensure they are properly secured, they're properly
Yep.
configured as well.
Right.
And so I think that we're going to see a shift to where now, if our primary authentication mechanism is a personally owned device to a business network, oh man, this is going to be a mess when it comes to time to investigate account compromise and incidents. And think
Yep.
of legally, right?
Oh man.
If
Yeah.
a user is operating on a personal device, and you don't have an acceptable use policy that clearly defines that if this user uses this device to connect to your business infrastructure, in the event of an incident, we have the rights to confiscate that device for investigation purposes, we're going to be in a mess, man. We're going to be in a big
Oh,
mess.
I mean, that's already a concern with, BYOD as it is, but then to add something like passkeys onto, which, it's one thing to have email on there that you can say, oh, no, they left. We're going to remove email from their phone. How are you going to handle their authentication method too, right? Like, this is,
Right.
there's a lot to consider on this. I think you're right.
Yeah. And especially too, I mean, we've talked about this before, but I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just go, anyone who's listening right now, do a Google search and look at how much malware has been found in the last year on the Google Play Store.
Oh yeah.
And
There's a
so,
huge, I was gonna say there's a huge push with malicious imposters of Chat GPT out there. Like
mhm.
that's a huge thing right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's already a malware ridden marketplace for apps, right? And so
Mhm.
we're going to see some of that malware start to pivot its focus, I think, into targeting passkeys. That's going to happen. The other thing I think about too is like this is, a push. We don't have to use passwords. It's going to be secure. Our good old social engineering techniques that everyone still gets tricked by of, engaging in a phishing attack and having someone do something on their device.
Mhm.
It's still going to be just as effective or more effective now than it was before, because it's easier for our users to say, hey, you're going to get a passkey request right now as I work to fix your device because I'm from Microsoft. Just go ahead and
Yep.
approve that, and that'll allow me to fix this. Oh, yeah, no problem. Cool. Approve. Boom. Done. We're in. So there's going to be new attack vectors. Then the other thing, all right, and think about like Jeff from an admin standpoint. If you're not real good at making sure you're backing up those passkeys and you have those
Oh.
passkeys and secondary authentication methods, when Brad goes to Mexico this year and loses his phone in the ocean, it's going to be a nightmare getting that access reestablished.
I only lost my sunglasses in the ocean, not my phone.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's
Well,
not happening. But yeah, no, yeah. Well, and the other thing is think about biometrics and the issues that we
mhm.
have there. I know somebody who uh, had face lock on their iPhone. They fell asleep after a few too many bourbons, and their kids unlocked the phone and cranked the heat of the pool up. And he had like a $1,300 electric bill. This
Right.
is a real life example of well,
Yep.
what's going to happen now if that happens and you lose your biometrics, right? Or
hmm
something happens and it's not done correctly, and they can
hmm
uh, imitate your biometrics. You can't
Yep.
change those. So how do
Yeah, for
you
sure.
get a valid unlock, right? So
Yep. Yeah, and I'm not saying like this isn't. There's not going to be benefits as well.
oh, for sure,
I think there will. I just think we all have to be aware as security practitioners that this is going to cause a whole new layer of complication that we probably need to start planning for today, and we probably need to start thinking about how the shift is going to impact our organization today. And the biggest thing, if I give like one piece of advice to do now, it's for any business who allows BYOD to make sure that you have that policy clearly defined so that in the
Mhm.
event of a security incident, you have legal rights and authority to be able to investigate that personal device. And
Yep.
make sure your employees know that as well, because it's two factor, right? A, it's the right thing to do to make sure your employees understand what they're signing. They should clearly understand that acceptable use policy, and you should be clearly communicating that with your employees so that in the event you do need to follow this process, it's going to be smooth. No one's going to be surprised. No one's going to be pushing back and calling a lawyer to prevent you from taking something that you need for business
Right.
purposes, right?
Or you take it and then they bring in a lawyer after the fact, and now you've got a whole mess
hmm
of having to defend yourself.
Yep. Yep. 100%, man. So be on the lookout for that. The other thing too, I did want to briefly mention, just because everybody says Macs or
Yeah.
Macs don't get viruses, whatever. Macs are more secure. Just so everybody knows, there's a Cobalt Shock variant that we're seeing in the wild targeting Macs now. So um, be on the lookout if you are an Apple shop or a Mac shop. Starting to see more activity tick up in that space, utilizing Cobalt Shock command and control frameworks, which is framework that we see used in a lot of our incidents, essentially uh, eventually resulting in ransom attacks. So be on the lookout. Make sure you are properly securing your Mac just as you would any other device.
Yep.
What about you, Brad? Any other thing you want to bring up today, man?
You know, I think I mean, I mentioned it a little bit with the chat GPT and the malware, but just from a business perspective, it's probably good. That's another thing we probably you want to start getting a policy around. Um, and you don't want to be Samsung with your source code in AI. Probably not ideal for your business operations.
Yeah, I agree. That's something that it's been coming up in conversations with me a lot lately, asking if we have that template, the policy template for managing AI in business environments. And we don't right now, but that's something that we are going to work on creating. And it sounds like, Brad, this is right in your wheelhouse, man, something that you would
Yeah,
be, I think you want to do. I think it's what you just
I
said,
could
right?
definitely do that. Yeah, no, the
Heck yeah.
template is
Yeah.
don't use it. Don't, no, there are. I mean, there are absolutely business cases for it. Like there are good. It has a lot of potential to make jobs easier and faster, but it also has a
hmm
potential to be extremely disruptive to your business and provide intellectual property or trade secrets to become
hmm
part of the public database.
Yeah, and there's a lot of opportunities for efficiencies, upskilling ourselves, having quicker access to information, all that good stuff too. That reminds me, I was just trying to pull up the GitHub here to share this with everybody. Have you heard of Pentest GPT yet? So it's essentially a tool that's built that utilizes Chat GPT
Huh,
to assist pen testers through the pen testing process.
interesting.
Um, yeah, it's Gray, Grey, Gray DGL is
Hmm,
the GitHub who hosts that. And it was actually a project from a PhD student in Nanyang Technology University in Singapore. And I haven't messed with it yet at all. I was watching a video. It looks pretty cool. It looks pretty fun. He was showing some examples of using this. Essentially, if you're playing on Hack the Box,
mm-hmm.
you have a little AI support on the back end to help you step through a proper testing process and be able to find the path into that box. It's not going to do all the work for you, but it is really good at kind of being a mentor for people as they
Yeah,
work through these challenges.
that's it.
So it's kind of cool. I would say if you're interested in that, give it a spin.
So definitely see that being a hugely useful for a learning tool, right? You want to learn
hmm
how to do this, use it. I wouldn't want our pen testers necessarily putting customer data into it, but I can see where it would be a really
Oh
useful
yeah,
tool.
for sure. And yeah, you don't have to essentially in this situation install this locally and
Okay,
not put any PI into that as
cool,
well. So you can protect that and
cool.
look for basic header responses, basic port
Oh,
responses,
nice,
and things
very
like
cool.
that,
I'll have to
which
look
is
at that.
interesting. Um,
I was gonna make those CTFs a
yeah. So
little more.
speaking of that, like fun things you can do, I know I will for sure. I think it will. Um, So I know Pinky, we've been working on our blue team, our team lead, Pinky, has been working on building a blue team simulator for training and education purposes. And it's up and running now. It's really cool. We got a scenario built and he's building some other scenarios. But the first is a ransomware scenario. And he was able to code a functioning, unique ransomware executable by
Hmm,
using Chat GPT. So it didn't do the entire thing for him. He kind of used logic to step through each piece of
that's cool.
an encryptor and essentially was able to compile all those pieces together and get a new, you know, working ransomware encryptor to use in our system. So it's kind of cool.
That's very cool. Yeah, see, that's a great use case for it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
downside
exactly.
is
Yeah,
hackers could use that too. But
for sure. All right, cool, man. I think that just about does it for today. Let's do another shout out. We gave a shout out in the beginning. We always got to give a shout out at the end, man. So, who do you got
yeah.
today?
Um, I'm gonna give a shout out, totally off base here, not information security related, but shout out to Gillette Children's. My son's got some surgeries coming up, and just he's 8, and how well they treat him and make him prepared for it. It's just really impressive to see. He's got major surgery and is not
Mm-hmm.
concerned about it at all, which is awesome for me. I'm concerned about it,
That's
but
amazing.
it made him feel so
Yeah.
comfortable with it.
Yeah. Well, big shout out to Zach, man. He's a tough kid. He's an amazing kid. He's got a great old man, a great family, and I know he's going to get through this and recover well. So give my shout out to Zach today, man. Hang in there, tough
I'll,
guy. You're
I'll,
going to get through it all.
I'll let him hear that. That'll make his day.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Brad, for another awesome episode. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we will talk to you soon. See you later.